I'm Leo Trezani. I'm a pediatrician and researcher who studies the effects of chemicals on the hormones in our bodies. And as I was writing Sicker, Fatter, Poorer, I was struck by how different the exposures are between the United States and other countries to endocrine disrupting chemicals. In particular, I was shocked by the fact that levels of flame retardants in the United States are actually higher than practically every country in the world. Now that's a byproduct of a law back in the 1970s in California done with very good intentions. The intention was to require flame retardants be put in everything under the sun because the idea was that it would slow the spread of fire and prevent people from dying. Now I appreciate that intention, but we realized years later that the flame retardants didn't do that much, and then we recognized that flame retardants especially mimic thyroid hormone. And thyroid hormone is crucial for baby's brain development, and there are other consequences of these flame retardants on human health, including effects on testosterone in men, among other things. But leaving that aside for a moment, California did the right thing in 2013 and changed the law. And that means that going forward, we won't have such a legacy of this exposure going on for generations to come. Now that leaves us with a lot of furniture in people's homes that probably had the old version of manufacturing with the flame retardant. The good news is I'm not suggesting you chuck all that furniture and get rid of it altogether, but there are some steps to keep in mind about reducing your exposure to flame retardants of concern. Now let's talk first about buying new furniture, because there are some things to watch out for even still despite this law. So there are 3 versions of a label that you can find underneath your couch, for example. And the first version specifically declares that the furniture has no added flame retardant chemicals. Now, if you've got that, you're all set. The second version says that the furniture adheres to what's called TB 117-2013 or 2013. The numbers don't matter as much except for that year at the end. The 2013 signals that it's in theory following the new law, but without the declaration that there are no added flame retardant chemicals, you really have to ask the manufacturer or the company you're purchasing it from to be sure that it's free of flame retardants in the first place. The third type of label to watch out for just says this furniture adheres to TB 117. Now, with that one, unfortunately, you're pretty sure that the flame retardants have been sprayed into that furniture in the first place. So if you're trying to buy a new piece of furniture, I'd avoid that altogether. Now, let's come back to the possible situation that you might have old furniture in your home, which many of us do. Again, you don't have to throw it out. In fact, the thing to watch out for most of all is if it's obviously torn or open. And the concern is about the foam in the furniture. The foam is where the flame retardant was sprayed to prevent the spread of fire. So if you see that, you might have the option of throwing it out or getting a new piece of furniture, or you can cover it up with a cloth or plastic kind of covering to ensure that the flame retardant doesn't accumulate in the dust. It's also important to recognize there are other sources of flame retardant exposure in our homes. Electronics, clothing, just to name a few. Now, in that regard, there are 2 things you can do to reduce your exposure right away. A wet mop every couple of days will sop up the chemical flame retardants that have accumulated in the dust in our homes. Also, simply opening up the windows and allowing for air to recirculate can reduce the levels of flame retardants in dust in our homes substantially. So through those 2 safe and simple steps, you can reduce your exposure substantially without having to move to Germany or France or some cabin out in the Nordic countries to reduce your exposure to these chemicals of greatest concern. It's not to minimize the impact that that can have, because in the United States, flame retardants contribute the majority of the disease burden and cost right now due to endocrine disrupting chemicals in the United States. But with those safe and simple steps, you can take a deep breath and sit back on the couch and watch your favorite TV show.